Hi everyone, my name is Anne. Thanks for joining me on Art on the Creek. I'm really happy that you're here with me today. Do you remember the art haul video I did a while back? Well, I opened quite a few supplies and it's time to revisit that list of things that are sitting here on my desk waiting for me to play with them. Today, I thought we could get out the Boku Undo set of Japanese watercolor. These are fun. I am making this introduction after I've already done the video, so I can tell you these are the most unique watercolors I've ever tried. I've got some interesting paper to try them on, and we'll use traditional watercolor paper. But let's go play with these. Let's see what they can do. Well, let me tell you, I am the first to admit that I know very, very little about Japanese culture. So this entire endeavor, this part of the video here, was a real learning curve for me. So bear with me. Everything here I have is just new to me. So the paper, first of all, I want to talk about that. This particular painting on the paper, I've seen it before. I think it might be a very traditional Japanese painting. My mother-in-law has a scroll that's painted on silk, and it's this exact same painting. So I don't know what it means or what it signifies. However, it is very much in the traditional style of what I think is called Sumi-e. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. But Sumi-e is the art of Japanese calligraphy done in ink on either silk or rice paper. This particular paper I have is unsized rice paper. I do know that there's some other papers that you can use. This paper that I bought feels like tissue paper, and it's called Xuan, X-U-A-N paper. But these inks, they're watercolors. I'm going to use that term interchangeably because they act so much more like ink than they do watercolor. Let's go ahead and open this paper up. And like I said, it's very, very thin, like tissue paper from what you would find in a gift wrap. It's about the thickness of tissue paper. And as you can see, it's kind of a white. It looks like there's little flecks in it of some kind, but not like handmade paper. I don't know. There's an emboss on one side of it. I don't know if you can see that. I'll tip it in the camera a little bit. It looks like bamboo trunks. So one side is textured and the other side is very smooth. I have no idea which side of the paper you're supposed to use or if it matters. I'm going to play around on the textured side. This back side here is very, very smooth, but none of it definitely is not sized. And I know that when you're working with Sumi-e paints, at least from what I have gathered, when you're grinding the ink stick and working with your paints that way, doing traditional Japanese calligraphy type of art, there are different kinds of paper you can use, and some of them are sized more heavily than others. So right now, but all of this I'm using here, there is no sizing in this particular pack. In no way do I claim to be proficient in the ways of Japanese art, but I do have this extremely inexpensive set of quill pens, and from what I gather, that is the preferred, not quill pens, quill brushes. That is the preferred style of brush to use when you're painting Japanese calligraphy. Now the brush in my right hand there, that is a Princeton Neptune, and it's a number 12, and you can see that it correlates about with this medium quill here, which is a size 6. So the numbering of the quill brush is going to be a little bit different than your round watercolor brush. So it is time to open these up. I'm just going to use that X-Acto knife to slice the plastic wrap that's on here. It's packaged in a cardboard box. They're individual pans. They're very large. They are about the size of the Kuretake Gansai Tambi paints, although these do appear to be just a little bit larger. They come in this set of 6. You have reddish black, yellowish black, greenish black, bluish black, purplish black, and brownish black. And when I measure this here, you can see it's about 2 inches by 1 inch, by almost 1/4 of an inch deep. So these are pretty significantly sized, and I really like that because what it means is you can lay a brush in there really easily without having to worry about anything being too small for your brush or doing any damage to your brush. I'm going to stick with this very smallest one. These puppies hold a ton of water, and this paper has no sizing on it, so this is going to be interesting. Let's swatch them out. As I'm swatching these out here, I'll tell you a little bit about these paints from what I was able to gather. They're, like I said, they're made in Japan, and I think Boku Undo is the name of the company. They can have different kinds of binders in them, which might be why it seems like these feel like ink as opposed to the Kuretake Gansai Tambei paints. Gansai means made in the traditional style. So that can mean, for these particular paints, it can mean any kind of binder. They could be bound with honey, with beeswax, with sugar, or not honey, I'm sorry, sugar, beeswax, gum arabic, glycerin, a lot of different things in the binder, which I think is why these feel just ever so slightly different than watercolor. Now, right now I am swatching them on this paper that I've never used in my life, and it's acting a little bit differently. The paper, you can feel it. It's not like painting on tissue paper, because that just kind of wrinkles up and you know, gets all wet and bleeds all over. But this isn't bleeding. It's not leaching into the design of the paper in any way. If you decide you want to get some, just look for raw Xuan rice paper. Great for beginners. Let's just go back to something I'm familiar with here. And let's swatch these out on 100% cotton watercolor paper, because this is how I will use them. I got the pack of paper. All of these were sold separately, by the way. The brushes, the paper, and the paints. But I got the paper just for something to play with, just to see what it would be like to do that Sumi-e style. Wow, I would need to take a class. I felt like I was completely in deep water. And I'll show you some of my epic fails here in just a moment. But I want to show you how these swatch out on regular watercolor paper, because for my intents and purposes, that's the way I will use them. And I'm betting that's the way most of you will use them too. Now, since these are a water-based product, you can use them with any watercolor you have. You can mix them. You can add mica colors to them or pearlescent colors. You can do whatever you want with these as long as you're using a water-based media. The thing that I noticed about these, they lift exceptionally easily, and I will show you that here in a little bit when I do the lifting. But what I want to show you here is how well, after I swatch them, how well they travel in water. So you can use wet-on-wet techniques with full confidence. Now, I will also mention that my water over there is getting really dirty really quickly. It's more so than if I were using regular watercolor, and I don't think that's just because they are the shadow colors. I think that it has something to do with the pigment makeup. So let's play around a little bit more. I've got the same paper, different set of swatches. I made these pretty full of water, and for some reason I filmed this in slow motion. So, you know, this is the director's cut. But what I'm doing is I'm putting salt in these swatches because I want to see how that works. Usually when you put salt on watercolor, it will absorb the pigment and leave a starburst design behind, which is exactly what these do. So they're very, very versatile. I want to try playing around a little bit more. Again, I'm trying to make that bamboo branch and it's just not working. I don't know. It may not be in me, guys. I'm going to have to take a serious class on how to work with this paper. But I wanted to paint a little bit of bamboo, the plum flower, and pine. The reason that I wanted to paint these, I have to tell the truth. We are a great big family here on YouTube, and one of my dear YouTube friends, Irene, over at Inkworks, I will link to her channel. She just reviewed a fountain pen that had the most beautiful pine design on it. And the particular pen is made by Schaefer. It comes in pine, bamboo, or plum, which is their Three Friends of Winter set. So I did some research thanks to Irene's video, and I discovered that the Three Friends of Winter are a very important motif in Japanese art and culture, as well as China and some other Asian cultures. So that little practice page was for you, Irene. Now, many of you know that we used to have a Shiba Inu. She passed away last October, our little Sasha, and I thought it would be really fun to try and paint her on this paper. It was fun, but wow, I just felt like I had no clue what I was doing. It's very difficult to control your level of value when you're not dealing with sized paper. I was completely out of my element on this, but I want to show it to you anyway, just so you can see what it's kind of like to paint something on this. I'll show it to you again at the end because it really does, it turns out okay for a first try. And it really was kind of funny because that pose of Sasha, I've painted it many, many times and I'm quite familiar with it, but on this paper it was just like learning how to hold a brush again. So there you go. You can see the salt did work, and I think it's quite lovely. I've already put away my water though, so let me just spray this brush here with water because I want to show you how easily these lift. Come on, water, get over there. My table is still slanted. Okay. I just want to show you just how easy it is to lift. Look at that, 2 strokes and you can already see pigment come up. And I'll just blot this off here on a paper towel and we'll go through and I'll show you how easy all of these are to lift. So I don't want to set my sketchbook in the water though, so let me clean that up. But yeah, look at how simply these lift up. That's the brown. First one I did was the purplish black, and then that's the blue. Here's the green, and then this one is the yellow. And then finally, we're going to take a look at the reddish black. I can't pick a favorite color. I love all of these. All of those to me just really are so peaceful. I think that they're very apropos for that Asian style of art where you have a lot of natural paintings, a lot of paintings of nature. These have a sheen to them, but they don't have that shellac element that I found to be true in the Gansai Tanbei, the Kuretake watercolors. These are very, very matte, very soft, which would almost lend you to believe that they're not light fast. But according to Kimberly Crick, who has done some tests on it, now she's got a YouTube channel and a blog where she does a lot of watercolor formulation comparisons and light fastness tests, so I really trust her. But her Boku Undo Shadow Black set was tested in indirect window light in 7 months, and she had hardly any fading at all. So pretty good. But the pigments are beautiful. I really feel like this would be a great set to use to paint a wonderful mountain scene, which is just what I'm going to do right here for you now. I just felt really drawn to the elements of nature with the colors in this set, and they're very soft attributes. So let's go ahead and let's try and paint a little mountain scene here. I am using that number 8 round Princeton brush because I need to go to school for the quill brushes. But we'll just stick with what we know, shall we? This is the brownish black that I'm using in the back, and I've got the bluish black on the peak in front. I'm really enjoying this. I am finding these effortless. One thing that I will let you know is that when you do subsequent washes, the wash underneath will definitely lift up. So you want to be careful about that. I don't know enough about Sumi-e, but I wonder if it's intended to just paint in one layer and not layer over. I don't know. It would make sense given the way that these paints perform. But I really am enjoying this. I'm just kind of trying to do anyway, mountains with a lake in front and just some kind of greenery on the far shore, and then we'll have rocks on the shore nearby with some cattails over on the left. So I'm just trying to add some foliage back here, trying to use all the colors in the palette so that you can see how well they work together. You could use these separately though. I'm thoroughly enjoying every part of this process. The paints are going down effortlessly. The pans don't need to be re-wet, which in my dry Colorado climate is just a gift and a half. You don't need to pre-spray the paints at all. They just, right away, they want to paint for you. It's just such a relaxing, effortless experience. I am just really, really happy. I had no problem whatsoever, and this is actually one of my favorite pages in this sketchbook now. I did the reddish brown for the cattails and now the brown for the rocks, and I'm going in with some of the purplish black here to just kind of augment those rocks and see what happens when you layer things together, kind of a wet on wet, dropping things in, and I'm just kind of blending it all together on the page. And then I'm going to do something that's really kind of fun. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this technique, but I'm taking a palette knife and I'm going to scrape in the wet paint to kind of scrape in some highlights or some planes on the rocks to get them to look a little more square and a little more chiseled. So I'm just kind of scraping in some designs. You can do that with watercolor. You can use any kind of a sharp implement. Now, no, it will etch in your paper, so you do want to be careful, but you can use any kind of implement to just kind of scrape in some designs. And I just want to go over these cattail leaves here again to just kind of get them to come back to the forefront. I enjoyed this so much, and if you enjoy painting flora, fauna, landscapes, wildlife of any kind, you might really want to consider this set. I would highly recommend getting a set of these. They're not too expensive and you get a lot of paint. If you use them in a watercolor journal or on watercolor paper, you're going to be able to just use them right away because they act and function exactly like regular watercolor. If you do what I did and try some of that paper, good luck. I really want to take a Sumi-e brush class now. I don't even know if I'm saying that correctly, but that kind of Japanese calligraphy, maybe that's what I say. I want to take that class like that because, wow, that would be so fun to be able to get my Shiba painting looking a little bit better. Yeah, I love our girl and I love painting animals, and it would be nice if I could get a really cool version of it like that done. But wow, this paper was just wild. And I don't know how to treat the paper. I don't know how to get it from wrinkling. I know nothing. I know nothing about it. But this I know, and this is the part I can definitely share with you in confidence, that working with these paints, the Boku Undo set of shadow paints on watercolor paper is nothing but joy. If you already have a set of the Kuretake Gansai Tambe paints, the ones with the shellac in them, these would be really interesting for you because they're so different. I honestly, I think if you have any watercolor set at all, these would be a really fun thing to augment whatever you're using because they're just so unique in the way that they perform. The color range, the beautiful muted nature of everything really lends to a landscape painting very, very well. And I'm not surprised because I have a feeling that that is exactly what they were formulated to do. I will continue to use these in my watercolor journal, and I think that for me anyway, that's the best way to use them until I can learn how to drive that paper better. My goodness, that Xuan paper is very, very difficult. So yeah, case in point. I'm showing you these. I am bearing my soul for you because these Shibas that I did on this Sumi-e paper, I've painted her many, many times on watercolor paper with this very pose, and I've created some really good paintings. Not to blow my own horn, but they certainly didn't look like this. This paper makes it a huge learning curve, but I don't regret getting that. So I'm going to put a link to everything in the description because if you want to use these on watercolor paper, you'll have success, no problem. You'll love them. They're really unique to work with. If you're looking to make a deep dive into Japanese calligraphy, that Xuan unsized rice paper, the raw rice paper, is the place to begin. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you today. Everybody take care. We'll see you next time. Bye now.